Jimmy Smith is from the Blades Ramble podcast. Evening, Jimmy.
Evening, Andy. Okay.
Yeah, good. Thanks. So, welcome to the programme. Just while before we come on to the game tomorrow, this is going to be a fascinating insight in January as to where the ownership of the football club sees the future of the football club, isn't it? Invest fairly significantly. It might suggest they're gambling to stay up. Don't invest significantly, and it may well mean they are protecting themselves for next year.
Yeah, it's a difficult balance to try and work out, isn't it? I think, obviously, Chris Wilder coming in, he will be well aware of the circumstances before he came and signed the deal, so he will likely know what he's working with. It's a tricky one. I wouldn't want us to go crazy in the transfer window and spend an awful lot of money. I think it'll be sensible, but we certainly need some reinforcement. So I wouldn't be surprised to see quite a lot of movement at Bramall Lane, to be honest. The new manager coming in, Chris talked about it in his press conference, which I thought was handled great again. It's just great to have that enthusiasm about playing for, being around Sheffield United again, and gets the fans back together. I think he'll want some new faces in, and for that to happen, some faces are going to have to go out. So I don't think there'll be a lot of money spent, Andy, but I think there'll certainly be a little bit there to play with, and it'll be expected that we do a bit of wheeling and dealing, which he's talked about, and I'm looking forward to it. Yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out, because there are players that have clearly been signed in good faith, but seem to me like players for next season.
Yeah, they were talked about development signings, weren't they? Yeah. Players like Larouci and Traore. Slimani went into that category, but he's looking like he's making some waves now at the Lane, and he looks good when he came on against Brentford, so maybe he can force his way in. But I'd expect players like maybe Larouci to be moved on. Luke Thomas hasn't really worked out. That would free up a really valuable second domestic loan spot for us. Koulibaly hasn't been able to get going, to be honest. So is that something we look at in January to move him on, so we free up a space in the squad? There's room there to move players in and around. If Chris Basham's injury is going to be significant enough to keep him out for the season, unfortunately, what a sad tale that is for a brilliant servant for the club. But if we can't use him for the rest of the season, do we deregister him and open up a spot for somebody else? So there's difficult decisions to be made, but it allows you that room for manoeuvre in the transfer market, which is exciting.
And there's a fair degree more excitement now around the place than perhaps there was, given the results or the nature of the results against Bournemouth and Burnley, and the change. Now, I appreciate people will have their opinions on that. I've said mine too many times, but there is no doubt that Chris has come back in, and the positivity of the performances, albeit in defeat against Liverpool and the victory the other day against Brentford, has lifted things.
Absolutely it has, and I was listening to Ken before I came on. Ken isn't sure about Chris Wilder, and everybody's got their own opinion on it, and that's absolutely fine. I like yourself, Andy, was very clear about my thoughts on it as soon as Chris Wilder was rumoured to be coming in. I thought it would be, and I believe it's starting to look like night and day from Paul Heckingbottom, and that's no slight on Hecky. He did a fantastic job for us getting us into the Premier League, did exactly the job that was asked of him, to be fair, in very difficult circumstances. But it just wasn't working this season, and we needed to change it. And Chris Wilder coming in to what was a really flat club, to be honest. The results had been terrible. The performances were getting worse and worse. And I think, personally, it should have happened a little bit sooner. But you can't say the board didn't give Eki every chance in terms of time to turn it around, even if the finances weren't there to support him. But I think, Chris Wilder changes everything on its head completely. He's one of us. He understands what it's like. He's humble. He's been quite humble in his return, which I think has pleasantly surprised a few. He understands that he needs to win some of the fan base back round because of the circumstances in which he left. He left under a bit of a cloud after always saying he'd leave through the front door. But it didn't quite happen like that, like everybody wanted it to. And now he's got the chance to have a second go at it. And keeping us in the league would potentially be just as big an achievement as getting there in the first place.
Oh, very much so. And that quest continues at Chelsea. So where do you sit then? It's Chelsea and it's Billionaires Row and it's this player and that player from some of the best places around Europe, or it's fragile Chelsea. And of course, Sheffield United have got chance of beating them at Stamford Bridge. Absolutely,
they have. I mean, I would... Now that Chris Wilder's here, I'm back on the positive train and looking very optimistic at things. So I back us to go there and get something. Listen, it's Chelsea. So on any given day, the amount of investment they've put into that squad, they could turn up and beat anybody on their day. I know Chris Wilder was citing the Man City performance where they turned up and matched a very good Man City side, the best team in Europe. However, they also lost to an Everton side. They've lost to a very poor Man United side. I think they've lost 3 in the last 4. So we've every chance. If we're going to play Chelsea at any time, now it's as good as any. We are hoping to continue that momentum and that bounce, if you like. But it's the confidence going into the players. I think Jack Robinson, I never thought I'd say this, but I think Jack Robinson's a big loss at the weekend.
Oh, definitely. He's been great this year.
He has been playing so well. And I've been on his case for a long time because I think he had a mistake in him, but he's done nothing but improve time after time after time, and he thoroughly deserves his place in the team. And we'll miss him at the weekend. I think potentially Max Lowe coming in weakens us a little bit, but this is what we're dealing with the squad that we have currently. So we'll do absolutely everything we can to get a result. I'm sure of it, and I fancy us to upset the apple cart a little bit at Stamford Bridge at the weekend.
Well, I hope you're right, Jimmy. Thank you for your time on the programme. That's Jimmy Smith from the Blades Ramble podcast. Ramble!